You think about the wonderful spider web that we've developed inside of healthcare, where you do have your national GPO, then you got your subgroups who operate in a different fashion. You got your regional aggregation groups that do something completely different. You got your committed programs inside of a GPO that do something different. You've got to be able to help the rep understand, how do I navigate myself through all of this? If it's this type of customer who's part of this particular group, what do I say? If they're part of this group, what do I say? It's a premier national contract. You've got a SIN, you've got surpass, you've got a capstone position, you've got a Yankee position, and you're going into a hospital that's overlapping and covers two or three of those groups. What do you do?
Okay, well, hey, we're back. Wes is back in studio with us for another Tuesday Talks with Toomey. The outpour was so good last time, Wes, that I had to bring you back in, so appreciate it. Yeah, no, good. Well, look, I really appreciate you doing this with us again. I think there's some really good information we shared last time. And I really want to kind of pick up where we left off a little bit around GPO relationships and implementation, but we'll dive a little bit deeper, thinking about, before we talked a lot about kind of entry into the contracts and entry into a GPO. So now let's talk about a little bit more like established companies into a GPO. Because the other side of the fence is and clients that we work with and customers that we talk to and just other companies that I've been associated with over the years, right? Hey, we have a GPO contract. This is my second cycle. I don't really know if I want to renew it. We got a couple contracts going, but I don't really maximize it. I don't really see the value in it. So let's talk about a little bit bigger. Like, okay, now let's talk about the portfolio. Mm-hmm. Right? Now you have a relationship, or at least you know who to talk to at the GPO. You're starting to think about how you want to navigate your launches with your field team, and then the field team with the GPO. But someone like Ambu who's got multiple contracts on multiple GPOs, how do you take that relationship to the next level and really start thinking about not just one contract, but multiple contracts, mm-hmm. and navigating them all together in conversation with your GPO? Because you could have multiple contract managers, right? You should probably bring them all if you can at the same time. But let's start thinking about that. Like, let's unwind the portfolio sell process with the GPO involved, and how do I keep my multiple contracts, how to keep all of them moving forward, right? How to keep all of them engaged with the sales team and all. So let's start there. Talk about portfolio selling in the GPO and how that relationship really helps you keep that tight.
Yeah, portfolio selling in the GPO is really, really hard because they're designed to create competitive friction. And when you're bringing and giving someone an advantage across an entire portfolio, you're lessening your competitive friction across a category by category perspective. And as a GPO, and I'll put my premier hat on, am I limiting value by letting a supplier bring it all together and not keeping it separate? Right now, I can only get the best price if I put it all together. I'm losing leverage as a GPO in that aspect. So it's a tricky conversation, right? Because from a GPO perspective, I want to keep it separate. That gives me more leverage as the GPO partner and creates a greater level of competitive friction. And there's risks with bringing it all together. If I bring it all together and I limit others on contract because of this in a particular category, and this vendor can't provide for some reason in the space, I've actually put my membership in a negative spot. So it is really, really difficult. And you don't want to spend a lot of time trying to drive that if the GPO doesn't want to, mm-hmm. because you're creating a combative atmosphere. But the strategy to get there is, you've got multiple contracts. You should be doing, and we talk about quarterly business reviews. They're really hard in getting those scheduled because time is a finite resource. Mm-hmm. But if you can get at least once every year a full sit down with every contract manager that covers all of your portfolio, your entire portfolio, and when you do that, you're going to start having leadership come in because you've got multiple contract managers or portfolio managers, whatever you want to call it. Now leadership's going to come in. Hey, you've got this person and this person and this person in 3 different business lines who are working on your category, and you've got them sitting down for a business review. A leader's going to want to be there, mm-hmm. and now you've got the right audience to have that discussion. whether it comes to fruition or not, you've done the right thing to put yourself in a position to now talk about your company as a full organization and what you do from a portfolio perspective inside of a hospital and the value that brings. Whether they go down the path of doing it as a contract or not, I can't tell you that will happen, but they're going to look at you as a more holistic partner in you're viewing all your contracts as a single portfolio. You're managing it as a portfolio, and you're thinking about strategies associated with it. Where you're going to have greater success in that is at the IDN level. And the way you want to accomplish that is, no one wants anyone to go over their head. It creates, again, a friction. It creates poor relationships, and you put yourself in a bad spot. So how do you strategically you've got 2 or 3 or 4, 5, whatever it is, contract managers at an IDN that's handling your various products and your various categories. How do you elevate that to leadership? Use that exact same approach that you use with the GPO. Hey, whichever one you have the best relationship with. Hey, listen, I've got categories here and here and here and here. I'd love to tell the entire story. Can you facilitate bringing the whole group together? Would it make sense for your manager, who's over all of you, or maybe there's 2 managers, to participate in that conversation? You're setting that contract manager up where hopefully you've got a good relationship with to be a star. You're helping them elevate the type of discussions they're having, because I'm sure they've got aspirations to move into that leadership role, that next level. You're putting them in a position to shine and do that, and they'll appreciate it. If you want to, I'm always transparent with it. Like, hey, listen, I'd love to help you shine. How do we do that? I've got a full portfolio. Can you facilitate? Does that put you in a good position inside the organization? Love to work with you in that way. And you'll see that come together. You may have to do the presentation to them alone first to get them to buy into it.
Yep.
But once you get to that level and you can have that conversation, now you're establishing higher level relationships, and you set the rules of engagement in that meeting. Hey group, thanks for coming together. We appreciate it. Here's our story. Here's what we like to do. We can drive SKU standardization. We can drive supplier standardization. Here's the value prop associated with what we're bringing to the table. And if you get some type of buy-in in that meeting, then you establish, hey, I've worked with so-and-so on this. Can they be the lead? Now you've really developed a strong partner who will support you. You're back down to the contract management level. They're running the program, and you can go to their boss and say, hey, they're doing a great job. I so appreciate what they're doing for me. Hey, this is the part I think they need help on. Can you help them with this? Yeah. Now you're doing it in a way to be cooperative, and you're helping someone grow and develop. And really, if you're, in the type of role I'm in, your goal is to help people grow and develop. And whether it's inside your organization or outside your organization, always be thinking about, how do I do things to help someone grow and develop? And again, it shows you care. It shows that you're being strategic in the process, and you're developing really strong partnerships, because these contract managers eventually, they're going to be directors. They're going to be VPs of supply chain. And you want to build really good relationships with them for the future, even if you're not in your role anymore and you've moved on. Someone that you're probably growing and developing moves into that role. Mm-hmm. They've got that relationship, and you're helping them be successful longer term. And I think that's really a strong way to do it. It's worked very effectively for us as an organization. And you've got to work with your internal marketing team. How do you really build that story? Because it's different. It's a different sell. And when I work with my team, we're not, my corporate account team, we're not experts on products, features, and benefits. We're experts on our business model, our supply chain capabilities, what our portfolio does in the process of running a business of a hospital. Because essentially that's what a hospital is, let's face it. It's a business. And the business is healthcare. How do we help them do that effectively? And portfolio selling is a great methodology to help them run that business and be effective and be efficient. I won't go into the specific hospital system, but I always took a lot of value in a particular system that brought some leadership in from outside of healthcare. They came from the auto industry. And they implemented a lot of auto industry tactics and strategies in running that hospital, and they've been extremely successful. That's what we have to remember is this is a business. Yep. And we have to come in a way that helps them be effective in that business. SKU standardization, SKU reduction. The more SKUs you've got, the more risks there are, and the more costs there are in the general operational processes of your hospital. How do you create partnerships that give them guaranteed safety stock? right? Those type of partnerships across multiple product lines where they have a greater level of comfort and ease in knowing I'm covered, and you've got to do it in a way that, I get it, you need secondary backups. Here are the complementary companies that can be your secondary backups, so that if something does happen, here's the companies that can help support you. You should put them on as your secondary option. You got to think through it as, what are the gaps that I'm leaving them, and how do I help them close that gap?
So I really love how you dove into, actually it's kind of like owning a relationship beyond just the contract with who you're working with at the IDN level. And I will add one more. So you said SKU reduction, you said of like supply, like savings and reduction,
Right.
Supply chain continuity, making sure you have product available. And then the fourth one is contract compliance.
Yes.
Like, those are the 4 key conversation points that should lead every IDN conversation from the start. And you build out your strategy with those 4, you rank them, and through the process, you'll know exactly how to flow that conversation and build in successes. I love what you say is like make them the star. Because
Right.
I can think of 2 scenarios where we were working at the GPO level and one at the IDN level. And the success we had in the contract and the savings brought them to light among leadership saying, wow, you guys negotiated this, right? Well, look what we just did for the members.
Right.
What if we did this again with them? Well, now that person has a step up,
Correct.
right? And they're the ones that are moving up the ladder. So it's a 2-way street. And these are some great behind-the-scenes conversations of how do you really build a relationship. You help them develop. They'll help you develop. And when you're in a crunch, you can be like, hey, I really need your help on this. Right?
Correct.
I love that. It's
You know, one of the greatest analogies I've heard, a good friend of both of ours, Mike Mazzalonis, he said, corporate accounts is the offensive lineman of healthcare. And he's right. Right? You if you do your job well as an offensive lineman, you're really not noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And the stars shine. Your quarterback's completing passes, your running backs getting long runs, your receivers are doing long routes and having huge catches. Your tight end is you're running their slot receiver move and catching and getting the first down. Right? Everything's going wonderfully. You're helping everybody shine when you're doing your job correctly. And this is one of the hardest parts about corporate accounts is don't take credit. It's not your job. Your job is to set everything up for all the other stars to shine. But when you don't do well,
it's on you.
Everybody sees it and they know it because the quarterback's getting sacked, the running back's getting tackled in the backfield, interceptions are being thrown. So it's really important that you focus on how do I help everybody shine. Do my job, do it well, and do it in a way that I'm helping all the stars shine.
Yeah.
When you do that, man, the success is so wonderful.
Yeah.
And you relish in it on your own, right? Don't worry about the accolades. That's not what's important. When you have to be a very humble and very caring person to get into corporate accounts. And it's hard. A lot of people have the right mentality for it. But it's for those that do, it's so much fun. It's so rewarding. And you get to grow and develop so many people in so many areas.
Well, and I've always associated too with you're like the ultimate project manager. Right? You touch every bit of your company. You touch every bit of the you should be if you're doing it right within the health system, and you're trying to touch every part of the GPO. And when you got distribution, right? You're bringing all these people to the table and you're putting those puzzles together. And when it all comes together and you're moving the ball forward, it starts rolling, right? And it's hard not to be the one to say, "Look what I did."
Correct.
And that's a really hard trait because you're
correct.
At heart, we're salespeople, right?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
We really do want to be like, look what I did this year. But it's the others that will go further. There's reps and the managers and everybody that will drive harder when they see the success and they're like, wow, look what I did. But that's okay because they look at the success of the whole picture.
Well, and when you do it right, again, you're going to have. There's nothing more fun than, and we'll go to the vendor side, there's nothing more fun than at the national sales meeting, you see a region or you see a rep get up for region of the year or rep of the year, and they talk and they throw out, hey, one of my best partners is corporate accounts. So-and-so and so-and-so on the corporate accounts team really helped put me in a position to do this. So if you're doing it the right way, you're going to get the accolades. You might not necessarily get on stage, but you're going to get the accolades. You're going to get noticed by leadership in the organization because leadership will realize, what the corporate accounts did 2 years ago set this up for this rep to have this rep of the year victory. And it's really fun. And then you can watch on the IDN side or even the GPO side, those that you work well with and you create great contracts that create value in the marketplace, they get promoted. And hey, this contract helped put me in a position to get noticed. Mm-hmm. And those type of things are a lot of fun. And they've got a lot they have to do on their own. It's not just you creating that opportunity, but you've created notches in that process by partnering with them, and it's just fun to watch.
Yep. You mentioned that something else that's really big too. I think for national accounts is you're not the product specialist.
No.
I can tell you my very first call that I did when I took over national accounts was at Yale New Haven, and it was for the A-scope. And I went in, I had the corporate VP of supply chain, and I had his analyst in the meeting, and I was so excited because I got this big first call with Yale. I was like, here we go. Brought the A-scope in, I demoed it to him. He goes, Dan, this just went right over my head. He was like, this looks pretty cool, but I don't know what this would do. He's like, contracting, got it. And it was, again, it was green, I got out there, but I realized features and benefits are great, but that's not for me. I got to sell the company. I got to sell the business plan. I got to sell the direction we're going and align it with that health system. And then I'll bring in marketing, and then I'll bring the rep in, and I'll bring all these people in to help do all those things below it. But that first call, it's got to be business, and then you can go somewhere else.
And you always got to ask that question: hey, corporate account or corporate IDN, is there going to be any clinical folks in the room?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, bring a regional director, bring a sales rep with you, because they're the experts. That is what they're great at.
Yeah.
And it's we'll go back to the football analogy. I'm great at being an offensive line and blocking people. If I try to decide, I'm gonna go out and catch a pass, that's actually illegal. Right? That's a flag, and you're gonna lose 5 yards. Don't do the things that you're not designed to do.
Yeah,
so bring in your reps, and your RSTs are phenomenal talents. You have to use. They're a resource. Primarily, you're a resource for the sales team, but they're also a resource for you as corporate accounts, and you can't ignore that.
Yeah.
And you have to bring them into the meetings when there's a clinical person in the room. You make sure they're there, because they will do wonders for you in that discussion.
Well, I think it's a good segue into kind of where this conversation's going. But think about again, in keeping it in type of contracts, portfolios, and things that you're launching the contracts. Whether you're launching one contract, sometimes it might line up that you're launching two at the same time.
Correct.
Or across multiple GPOs, it could be way more. So when your team, you have a new contract and you're launching it out to your organization, talk about your expectations of your GPO and your IDN team. We'll take two directions. One is internal. How are they navigating the regional directors, the reps, maybe marketing? And the other side will be external, is how do you expect them to engage with the field reps of the GPO, the IDN, maybe contract manager, or even maybe a distribution partner to kind of tie that together. But let's start with internal first.
Yeah, so for the GPO team, my expectation is you're asking your fellow peers who handle the IDN piece, how's the contract been working? How's it working for you as you engage with your IDN partners? Asking the field team and the regional directors and the reps. You're not asking everybody, but as you're out in the marketplace, you're in a town for a meeting, and you meet the local reps for dinner. Ask the question: hey, what's working for you on this Premier agreement, or this HBG agreement, or Health Trust, or Vision agreement? Okay. And take that feedback and then use that in how do you make the contract better on the next cycle. Now, I without being in this world every day, your reps and your field folks are going to have ideas that they're wonderful ideas. It's just sometimes you're limited in what you can do at the GPO level, but at least you're getting that feedback. You take that in, you implement or you execute it as best you can in the negotiation of the agreement to make the agreement better. But then when an agreement comes out, the expectation is from the GPO team, you get on every region's phone calls, every region, one at a time. Get on the call, talk about that agreement that just came out, and then how does that tie into the rest of the portfolio? What other agreements do we have in place? How do they work together? How do you leverage the 3, 4, 5, 6 agreements you've got together to create value in a discussion at a clinical level and a supply chain level? How do you have the conversation? And this is one of the things I coach my team on, and whenever I'm on the phone with the field, I remind them that I get it. We're on a contract that has a commitment requirement to it with our GPO. You need to remember that when you go in and you're talking to your doctors and you're talking to your nurses and you're talking to your OR techs and you're getting into the clinical value of our products, and you start talking about the contract, they probably can't spell GPO. They don't care about compliance. You have to talk to them about the clinical differentiation and the value prop that you bring to the table that affects them directly, and you need to go to supply chain to talk about the contract piece, because that's their world. And that's where you can get into, hey, look, we're in a committed position through your partner so-and-so. How do we work together to ensure we drive compliance through your hospital system? Here are the physicians, the clinicians, the OR techs, et cetera, that are supporting us. Here are areas that we're getting pushback. And that's how you start the conversation. Mm-hmm. And from there, right, if you're getting support, you don't have to really bother the GPO team. If you're not getting support, then come back to your GPO, internal GPO partner who handles that GPO. Hey, I'm at Hospital X. We've got a committed agreement, but I'm not really getting support from the local supply chain team. Can you help me? Great. They're going to go and pull in the GPO team. They're going to try to go to the corporate level and find ways to create support. Don't go in as the local rep demanding you have to be compliant, you have to do this, the contract dictates it. All you're doing is creating a confrontational relationship. How do you do it through a partnership? How do you move towards compliance? In small steps. You might not get it all in one day. How do you do it over the course of 6 months, 12 months? I know we all want it immediately. Makes it easier to hit quota, right? Makes it easier to hit our number. But the hospital, again, resources are limited, time's limited. You have to take that into account. How do you work through it methodically? And then bring that back to your GPO leader inside your organization. They go to the corporate level, or leverage the IDN team to go to the corporate level for an IDN, go to the GPO team, field team for support from their side. Who else can we contact? Mm-hmm. Who else can we talk to about this? You use those resources, you're going to win. Not 100% of the time, but 80% of the time, you're going to win. You just have to keep methodically working through the process. And you mentioned it earlier, project management, right? And the GPO and IDN team, that's what they're doing. They're project managing. Contract, the front part is get the contract. Second part is how do we execute? Third part is how do we manage and grow the business? And that's what they're wanting from you. Give them that intel. Then they can leverage it to go and drive opportunity. And if it's done right, again, you're factoring in all the contracts, driving towards a portfolio sell inside the hospital, IDN teams driving it at the corporate level, GPO teams driving it at the GPO level, because you're seeing success up and down the board, top down, bottom up. And it creates tremendous value for your organization.
Yeah. No, you nailed it. I call it the contract squeeze.
Yeah.
Right.
It's easily stated.
Up, right. It's exactly right.
Right. Easily stated.
Yeah.
Very difficult to implement and execute
difficult.
on.
And I think also too, it's important to think about it too. Is you mentioned about time availability at the hospital level. So even though you have a sole source contract, or you have a compliant-driven program like a Surpass or a SendDrive, or from Captus, the Commit, those type of contracts, you're like, why isn't the business just coming in? That's something that's really hard sometimes to get your leadership, to understand and say, hey, listen, they're all in, but it might take them 4 to 6 months to actually do this because of lack of resources or projects that are
right.
Unfolding. How many times have you heard a sense of like, hey, I'm ready to do this, but we just launched trays, and I cannot do anything but trays right now because it is an absolute mess. So as soon as I get trays done, I will do this. But that might not be for 3 months.
Right.
And you want compliance. So internally you have to navigate that with your own leadership to say, listen, these things are going to happen, but we've got the pathways of these accounts, and we're moving forward very quickly, and we'll work on these in a timely fashion. But my GPO team, my strategic team is still talking to them, just finding out what they can do to help get ready for, and not pushing from the rep side going, you need to do this tomorrow, and ruffling all the feathers there. So,
well, you got to be, on the field side, the rep side, regional director side, you got to be very astute in that. And hey, I've got 5 accounts ultimately be part of this committed agreement. Don't go forecast that you're going to get the business of all 5 of those right out of the gate. Right? You've got to really think through it and forecast appropriately, and think through, okay, 10% I'm going to get up front, 20% is going to take me a month, 30% is going to take 3 months, and the rest might take a year.
Yeah.
And you've got to forecast that way, right? And I think as as long as you're being strategic about it and you forecast appropriately and you have those open discussions with leadership on, hey, here's where I am in those 5 areas, those 5 accounts, and you're working through it and you're touching base and you're there every 2 weeks or so and keeping up to date on where you are in the process, you're going to win. And it just takes a little while. And it shows the hospital that you support them, that you understand, that you're being a good partner, you're honoring the fact that they had trays to work on. But I'm going to be here. I want to keep showing up. You're not going to forget about me. And when trays are done, I'm going to be here to help you take this next level, the opportunity with me, so that you can move to being compliant with what your organization has agreed to. And that, as long as you follow it that way, again, 80% of the time it's going to work. 20% of the time there's going to be problems you can't handle, you can't predict. That it's just the nature of the game. Enjoy the 80, don't sweat the 20, and just keep going after it.
Love it. Yeah, no, it makes total sense. So let's talk about then navigating on the outside, right? So our external resources. It's still, your IDN team, your GPO team, but now you're looking at more like, okay, we're launching, we're getting more navigation. We know we have a pathway. Let's look at our 80% that's going to work. What's the engagement level that you're asking them to have externally as well to help drive and penetrate these contracts?
Yeah, I mean, you've got all the subgroups, right? So you get a national contract with Premier, let's say. You've got multiple subgroups, and my expectation is for my GPO person, now this national agreement's in place, go work with the subgroups. How are you going to leverage them to push the business in their subgroups? IDN team, how are you going to go and have that conversation with your IDN partners on that, and how do you go to your field organization from the GPO and get them to understand the value prop that we're bringing to the table? Yes, I know they got the launch document. Yes, I know they've got finite time, but how do you get connected with them so that they'll support you in driving this process? Again, may not work every time because there might be multiple vendors on contract and they can't support that type of discussion, but you gotta ask the question. And while they may not be able to, there might be multiple vendors on contract, and they can't give you preference over one or the other, they might be able to give you that nugget of information that it just so happens at this point in time, the hospital is looking to review this category. Here's who you need to talk to. If you aren't, again, it comes back to, in our first session, you gotta ask questions. Mm-hmm. And you gotta go to those external resources and ask the question. And what would get me attention? How do I engage with my hospital to have this discussion? Do you know what their strategy is in this area? Do they have any short-term or long-term viewpoints in this particular area? And they're going to have insights that kind of may not be able to answer every question, but you can get some tidbits that give you leverage and intel on how you move forward.
And just the interactions will even if it's where we're at right now. It gives you more clarity of the direction that they want to go, gives you more clarity of conversations to have back with your leadership, right? Your engagement, and that can be monthly, it can be every other week out of a launch, right? And you got to set that parameter early, and you can decide what's too much and what's too little. But I think it also shows your leadership how engaged you are, and you got a good pulse of what's happening there too.
Correct.
So talk about when you're launching out a contract, and we mentioned a little bit about like field reps and how engaging they can be and how important it is to be giving them details. Who educates the sales team on how to work with that regional group? And like, you said about regional calls, and you have each of the regions you go through. Like, what is good? Like, what's a launch packet really look like out to the reps so they know how to interact with that field team as well?
Yeah, of course, it's all the foundational information. What's the contract number? What if there's tiers? What are the tier requirements and structures? What are the price points per tier? Who's the contract manager at the GPO in case the customer has questions on the contract side that they need to go to the GPO for? Who do they contact? Who is the GPO person inside of AMBU that they need to reach out to if they have a specific question from a GPO perspective internally to AMBU? Those are the foundational things that you have to have. The secondary pieces are, and those are things that you want to create that the rep can do as a lead behind with the customer. Here's contract number, his tiers, his price points, Here's a couple key terms, whatever those might be. Things that are favorable for you, you feel are favorable in the marketplace. And then for the rep, the other thing that has to be in there is, okay, here's who else is on contract. This supplier, this supplier, this supplier. Here's what our estimate is of market share. Here's what, from our perspective, is and what the GPO shared with us, where we're positioned well and where we're not positioned well. Here are ways that you can talk about the agreement from a value perspective. Here are the things you should be saying at the clinical level, at the supply chain level. Here are resources that are available to you. Here are the field representatives that you can reach out to from the GPO that are in your area. Right, let's break this. Just don't give them the whole list. Let's break it down by zip code. Hey, Rep X, I'm not giving you a full list. I'm giving you here are the people that are in your zip code that cover your actual accounts and territory. Those are the things that make it efficient for the field rep to then have a packet that pertains just to them.
Yeah.
Here's all the pertinent information I need to know that I can leave with the customer. Here's the other information I need to know to plan strategically on how do I go have a discussion. What do I say to this person, this contact? What do I say to this contact? If I need help from the GPO, here are the 4 or 5 people I should reach out to and ask questions to or request support from. And now they've got a playbook that they can go and have that discussion with. You want to get really more intricate, and you think about the wonderful spider web that we've developed inside of healthcare, where you do have your national GPO, then you got your subgroups who operate in a different fashion. You got your regional aggregation groups that do something completely different. You got your committed programs inside of a GPO that do something different. You've got to be able to help the rep understand, how do I navigate myself through all of this? If it's this type of customer who's part of this particular group, what do I say? If they're part of this group, what do I say? It's a premier national contract. You've got a SIN, you've got Surpass, you've got a capstone position, you've got a Yankee position, you've got an Adventist Health Partner position, you've got an Allied Health position, and you're going into a hospital that's overlapping and covers two or three of those groups. What do you do? How do you have that conversation? And you have to be able to walk reps through that. And you need to look for, as a GPO person, for those specific scenarios and try to have one-on-ones with that rep to help them understand, listen, here's what you need to do to make sure you don't put any of our contracts at risk. You don't put our relationships at risk. You honor what that particular account's doing with whatever subgroup they are participating with. And that's where it gets really complex and complicated, and where you've got to have GPO team members who are really tied into all those various groups, how they function, what their relationships are and interrelationships are amongst all the other groups, so you can really coach the field on how to engage and not put you in a negative position inside the marketplace. Yeah. And it's very difficult. And it becomes more complex every day. Yeah. Because you've got someone who's part of all those subgroups and who's all of a sudden consolidating with someone who's part of a completely different set of groups. And where are they going to end up strategically? What direction are they going? How do you handle that situation? And when you see those type of scenarios, we can go back to the days when CHI and Dignity came together to form Common Spirit. Right? As the GPO and IDN team who's getting the information on that, you've got to get to the field immediately. This is what this means. Yeah. Or we don't know what this means yet. They haven't really made a decision. Here's how you engage for now. Now we know what they're going to do. Here's how you engage. Here's the conversation you need to have. And we've got to be able to help our customers, or not our customers, but our field team navigate the movement of our customers in the marketplace. Yeah. Because it's very intricate, it's very complex, and if you're not living in this GPO, regional aggregation, subgroup world every day, you don't know. Yeah. And I wouldn't expect you to know. It's our job to educate the field on those things and help them navigate through it effectively.
Yeah. Man, you just laid out an incredible playbook for any company to really understand the difficulties of launching a contract, but what national accounts really should be doing. Right, the IDN selling is great because you're going to the high level at the hospital and trying to get the product in there. But again, we work to get the contract. That's just when the work begins, right?
Correct.
There's so much to do to make it successful, and to have your team aligned with your strategies, to have the GPO supporting what you're trying to do from market strategies, and getting that engagement from your distribution and your health systems, so that they can kind of be part of the conversation. But the key is, and you really, gosh, you get so many good ones in there. I love the way you said it, like, your talking points around the value, right? Talk about the value of the contract. So what value adds you may have, what may be hidden tiers, the reason why we have them, and simplifying it for the reps. Give them just their material.
Correct.
Like I've seen, you don't want to, I know it's hard when you're a smaller company, maybe you don't have the resources when you send everything out, right? But as a rep, I get overwhelmed by a bunch of emails, or how many times you send out a full sheet like that's not me, this is no good, right? So sending out just their state or just their territory of accounts. Here's your top accounts that we have sales with today. Here's maybe like a quick target list of the regional manager. Use them, right? Let them divvy it out as well. Bring them into the fold and make them do some work for you too, so it's not all on you. But if you can give each rep good targets, and then exactly who their field rep is from the GPO, exactly where maybe some of the gaps are in the contracts, like all that information gets the rep running faster.
Yes.
And gets more excited because they see the opportunity in front of them instead of, well, now I have to do all this work to try to figure out where to begin. And you nailed it. They don't really know. You don't know what you don't know. And if you don't understand what an RPC is, you don't understand what a local aggregation group is, if you don't understand why someone can be part of, Premier, SendDrive, Capstone, they'll have a local, and then, they also buy from Vizient over here. Like,
Yes.
how's it possible?
Right.
It makes
It's
no
maddening.
sense.
It's maddening.
But, if you can help them navigate and coach them through those conversations, let's focus on what we can control.
Correct.
Right? Let's focus on the contract that's going to matter the most to them,
Mm-hmm.
and then the rest administration will help out with and we'll navigate.
As you talk through that, it pops something else in my head that's very effective in leveraging those external resources once a contract becomes effective. If you're fortunate enough at the GPO level to have an agreement where competition is left off, or you're in a surpass or a SendDrive position where it's limited, or you're in a captive position where you're limited, or your health trust, where it's very controlled. You want to go to them in an aspect of, hey, I want to help grow the business for you as a GPO because you're paid off of contracted volume. This vendor's been left off agreement. Don't give me everybody. Let's pick 10 targets.
Yeah.
And let's work together. You make it manageable because, again, time's finite. And they don't want to spend, the GPO teams don't have the time to spend their wheels on things that aren't going to create value for themselves. Pull a big list and send me everything. I don't have time for that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let's work together on 5 to 10 key targets. I'll pull my field team in, you pull your field team in. Let's look at how do we support each other and see, can we convert this non-contracted business over to contracted business? We both win. And it's a very small chunk. You take those 5 to 10, you work on those for 2 months. After 2 months, you've won 2 or 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let's put this aside. What's the next 10? What's the next 5 to 10? Let's go after those. And you get that pattern going, and you create wins, and you both see value in it. And you don't want the full list, because if you go take the bottom 20 and you get 10 grand in revenue off of that, nobody's really won.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of effort, and it's been costly, and it doesn't work. You take those top 50 where that's millions in revenue, and that creates tens and 15, hundreds of thousands of revenue for the GPO. Now you're both being efficient in the process. So that's another thing you got to think about that I'll say is on the vendor side, you got to think about the business model of the GPO. How do you think through that to make decisions to get the GPO to support you? Because at a certain level of volume, it doesn't do them any benefit.
Yeah.
It's costly to them. At a certain level, though, there's a tremendous amount of value for them. You need to think through that, and it'll actually help formulate conversations to be much more effective and impactful when you're talking to GPO, when you think about their business model. Much like you need to think about an IDN system's business model and where they're going. And it's in our previous session, one of the questions we talked about is ask about initiatives. One of those questions is, what's your business model?
Mm-hmm.
How are you looking at the outpatient, the inpatient to outpatient transition? Are you focusing on surgery centers? Are you doing joint ventures? Are you wholly owning? Are you being a minority owner? What are you doing? What's your strategy there? Same thing with the GPO, right? What's your direction for the next 2 years? What are you trying to accomplish? How are you managing that transition of volume from inpatient to outpatient? What is your outpatient strategy? Because our procedures, what we cover, outpatient's if it moves to outpatient, that impacts us too. We want to not see a degradation of our value and our volume by transitioning and it'll be another vendor who gets it? How do we work together on that? You got to think about that business model. You got to think about the initiatives to really drive success.
Yeah, no doubt. And when it comes to the way you interact with each one of those channels, right, it really brings home like a uniform approach, and whether from your company within and the external resources that you have, and what the GPO brings to you, right? Those extra resources that they really truly offer. But if you're not engaging and you're not asking and you're not present, you're not going to understand where they are and who to talk to, and they're not going to be as likely to help you because they don't know much about you either, right? So engaging with them is so important. So as we bring this kind of together, this kind of like bigger approach, right? We're thinking like a little bit bigger business, a much deeper dive into how to really get our contracts out there, engagement with our reps, engagement with the reps and the managers and marketing and supply chain from internals. And then of course you can have the hospital level, the field reps, it can be analytics, it can be the actual marketing from the GPO, right? There's so much more that you can keep access in there. Think about where, with consolidation of hospitals, acquisitions, bringing everybody together, GPOs, there's a lot of changeover from one GPO to the other, and then they come back or they move around, right? And you have a lot of local GPOs that are coming out. If you could kind of like say, okay, what do you think is going to be the most important thing from your team, thinking about your portfolio, your company, is how are you going to keep them focused and navigate all the changes that are happening in the marketplace? It's going to look completely different 3 years from now, right?
Correct.
So how do you keep them focused on moving contracts forward, keeping engagement when there's a lot of those variables that keep coming at us every day?
I mean, it really goes back to our prior session, Dan, is at the GPO level and the IDN level, you got to continually ask that question. What are your initiatives? What's going on here? What direction are you going? And when you find out that there's consolidation, let's go to the IDN side, and you find out that Spectrum and Beaumont are coming together, and they're part of two different GPOs. You gotta pick up the phone. You gotta ask the question: what does this mean? Where are you going? What direction are you going to go? How do you want us to bring your contracts together most effectively? You got to be open doing bridges, because there's a lot of suppliers, a lot of complexity, and they're not going to get it all done in 90 days. And you got to be looking at that as, hey, I want to be a partner. Let's take whatever the best pricing is you've got, and let's just do a 180-day bridge to get you through this process, to get us through this process together. And in that 180 days, let's find time to sit down and really put together a strategy on what's going to work for both organizations. We want to honor the consolidation that you're doing. We want to be a good partner for you. We're willing to have a 180-day window where we give you the best position possible between the two. But in that time frame, we got to figure out where you're going and work together on that. Same thing with GPOs. Is the GPO landscape is shifting. You got to have those conversations. You got to go to a health trust and go, listen, Allspire, they've walked away. What is your expectations? Premier, Allspire's come to you. What are your expectations? How do we navigate this? Who do we work with? Health trust, when are they coming off of your contract cycle? I got to make sure I at least have them protected in some manner so they don't go to list price. That's not fair to them. How do we work through that process? Premier, when are they coming onto your contract cycle? How do we convert them over to your contracts? How are you working with them effectively to do that? What is your strategy? You got to be asking the questions, and that's essentially what this business is. Ask questions.
Yeah.
Be transparent, ask questions. If you're doing those two things, more likely than not, you're going to be successful. Sometimes you might not get the 90% success. Sometimes it might be 70%. But you're going to be successful. And I think that's really what it boils down to, and everything we've talked about. Be transparent and ask questions. Listen. And then bring that intel back to your leadership and have the discussion on what do we want to do strategically to align with where the market's going. 3 months later, it's changed. Does it change our strategy, or are we going in the same pathway? Let's talk about it. And I think that's what's important. And for me, in managing my team, it's my GPO team. I'm on the phone with them every day. Who have you talked to today? What are you learning? What's changing in the market? What direction is that going? How would you change our strategy based on that? Mm-hmm. Call the IDN team constantly. Hey, I don't call them every day per se, But I'm talking to them about every once a week. Hey, what's going on at your IDN? They changed the GPOs? What are their objectives? What's happening? How does that change our strategy? Should it change our strategy? Mm-hmm. And taking that input, and then the field's getting a lot of information as well. What's funneling up to us from that? Is it the same information? Is it different information? We talked about earlier, corporate accounts is, from a sports perspective, the offensive line. From a political perspective, we're the State Department. Yeah, we're the ambassadors that are going out to the various countries, right, to negotiate deals, to keep goodwill. But we're basing all that off of the intel that's coming to us from all sorts of sources. And when there's differences in intel, which one's right? You got to dig in. You got to figure that out and position us so that we're making the best decision as that State Department to help the company go forward effectively.
Yeah. Well, Wes, I think you've done, again, an incredible job of painting a picture out there of what good looks like, what a good strategic accounts role and what the benefit it can bring a company. And as listeners out there today and thinking about their strategies and adding maybe another strategic account manager or 5 more reps, like which one's more valuable? Can't answer that for everybody, but you can see if you have a really good strategic account strategy and a really good account manager, strategic accounts manager tied to that strategy you have as a company, it opens doors.
Right.
And it might not be doors as in hey, I'm going to get sales by tomorrow.
Right.
But you're building a future together of a strategy that's going to open those doors and continuously pave the way for success for your entire sales organization.
You got to think through that question. It's a great question, right? Do I bring on 5 new reps? Do I bring on a strategic account manager or a corporate account manager? And, you got to look at revenue need and timeline. You're bringing on 5 new field reps. They're probably going to be revenue creating in 3 to 6 months. You bring on a corporate account person, that's 12 to 18 months. You get in the capital world, that could be 36 months before they're truly effectively being a revenue creator. So you got to think through that from a budgetary perspective. That's why you don't see very large corporate account teams, because it is such a long process, and you're dealing with fewer people. I always say this game, right? As a rep, you think of a healthcare system with 40 sites. Even inside of one site, you've got 30, 40 doctors you can work with. And if you don't do well with one, you can go to the next one and do really well. At the corporate account level, you're dealing with one person. You mess it up, it's all gone.
That's right.
So that's why it's a very careful role. You got to be very strategic in how you structure it, and you got to think long term. It's a very patient game. It's a very long term game, and you've got to be very, very thoughtful in the complexities of it, and bring in individuals who are very strategic minded, can see the big picture, and can think from a business perspective and have those business model discussions so they can come back and help create intel for leadership of the organization to drive the appropriate strategy. So it's a very difficult role. I know on the surface you look like a duck. Underneath the water, there's a lot of paddling that takes to make it effective. So it's a lot of fun. It's a great role. If you don't have a corporate account team, I encourage any med device player, anyone who's going to get into healthcare, you need at least one person. It's going to create a lot of value for the organization. But if you can grow it to 5, grow it to 5. If you can grow it to 10, get it to 10. If you can get it to 25, get to 25. At that point, you depending upon the complexity of your portfolio and whatnot, you're probably big enough. Yeah. Your BDs, your Medtronics, behemoths, they need many more than that. But your typical size, 20, 30 is the right size. You just have to scale up appropriately if you aren't already there. Can't scale up overnight. Scale up over a 5-year window. It's beneficial. There's a tremendous amount of value. And if you bring in the right people, you can drive your organization very effectively.
It's good. Well, Wes, thank you for your time again today. It's been another great talk. Appreciate you being on Tuesday Talks with Toomey. I'd love to have you back at any time. I think you've brought some really good information to the market. You've been an advocate for the market for years, so thanks for what you've done for the industry as well. And again, good to have you on, man.
Hey, appreciate it, Dan. Thank you very much. And go Tigers.